I never thought I'd be the guy sneaking out of my office building past midnight, heart pounding like I'd just robbed a bank. But there I was, clutching a half-empty bottle of whiskey, trying not to look like a mess as I wiped my sweaty palms on my shirt. The crazy thing? The reason I was in this impossible spot was because of one guy, my boss's son. The one person in the entire company I was supposed to keep my distance from. His name's Jamie. You've probably heard about him, even if you don't work at my company. He's got that kind of reputation. The golden kid, born with a silver spoon and the kind of smirk that can make you simultaneously want to laugh and punch a wall. My boss, Mr. Reynolds, is this old-school, by-the-book kind of guy, and Jamie's his pride and joy. Everyone tiptoes around him like he's some untouchable prince. And honestly, that's how I treated him too. Like he was off-limits, a storm cloud you just avoid because you know one wrong move will bring down a world of trouble. But that night, all the rules got rewritten. I work in marketing, and Jamie was visiting the office to check in on his dad's empire, whatever that means. We crossed paths in the break room when I was grabbing some pathetic excuse for dinner, a sad salad that tasted like regret. Jamie was leaning against the counter, scrolling on his phone with that bored, perfect guy look like he was above it all. I could feel the usual mix of annoyance and curiosity buzzing through me. He wasn't supposed to be hanging around here, invading our space like that. "Hey," he said without looking up. "You're the new guy, right?" Matt? I was caught off guard. Most people here barely remember my name even after months. "Yeah," I said, trying not to sound like a total dork. "You're Jamie, right? Heard a lot about you." He chuckled, that careless sound that somehow made the fluorescent lights buzz softer. "I'm more trouble than you think." That line stuck with me because, honestly, I didn't believe him. Trouble was Jamie's middle name in everyone's eyes, but it was all surface. Until that night. Later, the office emptied out. Everyone else had clocked out hours ago, and I was stuck finishing a campaign pitch for some client who clearly hated marketing. Jamie showed up again, this time with a bottle of something stronger than my sad salad. He shrugged like it was no big deal, but I could see in his eyes that there was something behind all that privilege and smirk. Vulnerability, maybe? Or something worse. We sat there, two guys from totally different worlds, sharing silence and cheap whiskey under the glow of emergency exit signs. I don't know what made me take that first step toward him, what pushed me past the lines I'd drawn so carefully. But suddenly, Jamie wasn't the untouchable boss's son anymore. He was just a guy, and that made all the difference. And just like that, the whole game changed. We didn't say much at first, just sat there in that sterile little break room, the kind of place that always smells faintly like burnt coffee in desperation. The whiskey bottle passed between us, and with every sip, the air got a little looser, the walls a little less stiff. I caught myself stealing glances at him, Jamie with a new kind of attention. Up close, he was different. His usual confident mask cracked just a little. Maybe it was the dim light, or maybe the drink, but I saw something real. Something that wasn't the spoiled rich kid everyone gossiped about. "So you really think I'm trouble?" I finally asked. Trying not to sound like I was fishing for some deep revelation, he shrugged, but his smile was softer now. "Depends on who you ask. My dad thinks I'm a handful. Mom, well, she's usually too busy to notice. Me, I just get tired of pretending all the time." I nodded, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy. I mean, yeah, I had my own crap. Nobody's life is perfect, but it was weird to see that even someone who seemed to have everything felt trapped. Pretending what? I asked, curious despite myself. Like I'm always the golden son, the perfect heir. I'm supposed to be this polished, responsible guy. But sometimes, I just want to mess up, be reckless, screw up so I can feel something real. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it hit home. That sounds exhausting. "Yeah," he said, eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite place. "It is." There was a pause, the kind that feels less awkward when you're not sure you want the conversation to end. I looked at him again, the way his brow furrowed slightly, the restless energy behind those dark eyes. I realized I wanted to know more. So I asked, "What do you do when you want to just be you, without all the expectations?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned forward and tapped the bottle. "I guess tonight's my answer." We both laughed quietly, like sharing a secret. And suddenly, the boss's son barrier felt thinner. Like maybe, just maybe, I could see past the reputation and find out who Jamie really was. That's when he reached out, not in some flashy, over-the-top way, but a kind of tentative, almost shy motion. His hand hovered near mine on the table, as if asking permission. I didn't hesitate. I placed my hand over his, and the contact was electric in the quiet room. No big moves, no grand gestures, just two people connecting in a way that felt both terrifying and thrilling. "Matt," he said, voice low, "you're not like the others here. You don't treat me like some untouchable freak." I smiled, feeling my own walls come down. "Maybe it's because you're not to me." He squeezed my hand gently, and in that moment, the office, the late hour, the whole ridiculous mess of our lives faded away. It was just us in that little break room, two guys who probably shouldn't have been there like this, breaking all the rules without even realizing it. But then, just as I was starting to believe that maybe something real could come out of this, the silence was shattered by the sharp beep of a security alarm. Both of us jumped, hearts pounding. Jamie cursed under his breath and looked at me, eyes wide. "Shit! I think the cleaning crew's late, and they set the alarm." I started to rise, but Jamie stayed put, shaking his head. "Wait, before you go. Matt, do you want to get out of here? Maybe go somewhere that's not this fluorescent nightmare?" I hesitated for a second. Was I really going to do this? Leave the safety of my routine for a night that was already spiraling out of control? But then I caught the genuine, almost hopeful look in his eyes, and I knew I had to say yes. "Yeah," I said, standing up. "Let's get out of here." We slipped out of the building through a side door Jamie unlocked with a keycard that made me realize he wasn't just some privileged kid. It meant he had access, control, something I barely understood. Outside, the cool night air hit me like a splash of clarity. The city was quiet, streets empty except for the occasional hum of a car passing by. Jamie lit a cigarette, the ember glowing bright in the dark. He glanced at me and said, "You know, people here think I'm invincible. Like, I can do whatever I want without consequences." I watched the smoke curl up into the air and said, "Sounds lonely." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It is. But tonight, maybe not." We started walking, no destination in mind, just moving. Me and Jamie, the boss's son who was supposed to be untouchable, finally just two guys figuring out what it meant to be real. I had no idea where this night was going, but for once I didn't want to run from it. We walked in silence for a bit, the city night wrapping around us like a blanket. Quiet, cool, and infinitely more real than the sterile office where we'd been stuck for hours. Jamie's cigarette glowed off and on as he took slow drags, the smoke trailing behind him like a whispered secret. I realized I was still holding on to the whiskey bottle, and he glanced over. "Dying for a drink, huh?" he teased, but there wasn't any judgment in his tone. Just this weird sort of understanding. "Yeah," I admitted. "Pretty sure I'm not a functioning adult right now." He laughed, a sound that actually surprised me, less rehearsed, more genuine. "Welcome to my world." It felt strange, how easy it was to talk to him. Not like work or polite small talk, but something deeper, like we were both trying to make sense of stuff we'd been pretending didn't exist. I found myself wanting to tell him things I never said out loud, about my messed up family, the pressure of starting a new job that I wasn't sure I was ready for, the fear of never being enough. Instead, I asked him a dumb question. "So what's your thing? When you're not the boss's son?" His eyes flicked down to the ground for a second, then back to me. "I write. Sort of. Nothing serious. Just some scribbles on a laptop." He sounded almost embarrassed, like sharing this was a crack in the armor. I raised my eyebrows. "That's pretty cool. What do you write?" "Stories. Mostly about people who don't fit in. Like me." I nodded, feeling a strange kinship. "Maybe I should read them sometime." He gave me that half smile again, the one that made your stomach flip, and said, "Maybe you should." We kept walking, the city lights stretching out in front of us like a promise. I didn't know where we were headed. Jamie didn't seem to care, and honestly, neither did I. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could just be myself without worrying about what people thought. Then he stopped suddenly, turning down a narrow side street lined with old brick buildings and flickering streetlights. The kind of place that felt like it belonged in a movie or something. He looked around like he was making sure no one was watching, then pulled out a key from his pocket. "Apartment's just down here," he said. Not exactly the penthouse you'd expect. I followed him into a small worn door, and inside was this cozy mess of a place. Books piled everywhere, art on the walls, mismatched furniture that somehow worked. It was nothing like the polished, perfect image I'd always imagined him living in. "Wow," I said, a little stunned. "This is really cool." Jamie shrugged, setting his cigarette down in an empty glass. "Not much, but it's mine." We sat on the couch, and for a moment, the silence between us was comfortable. I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, and the way the shadows played across his face made him look less like the untouchable boss's son and more like someone I actually wanted to know. Then he looked over at me, eyes serious. "Matt, do you ever feel like you're just playing a part? Like you're stuck in someone else's story?" I swallowed hard because, yeah, I did. All the time. He nodded. "That's what it's like for me. Everyone expects me to follow a script. Go to the right schools, make the right connections, marry the right person. But none of that feels like me." I reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "I get that. Sometimes I feel like I'm just faking it, pretending I know what I'm doing." He smiled softly, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Maybe we're both just trying to figure it out." And then, without thinking, I leaned in. The first touch of our lips was hesitant, like testing the water, but it was electric. Jamie's hand found mine, fingers intertwining with a nervousness that made my heart race even more. The world outside that tiny apartment disappeared. No business hierarchies, no expectations, just the two of us finding something real in the dark. After what felt like both an eternity and no time at all, we pulled apart, breathless. Jamie's eyes were wide, and I saw the same mix of surprise and relief in his gaze. "Wow," he said, grinning like a kid who just got away with something. "That was unexpected." I laughed, the nervous energy breaking the silence. "Yeah, unexpected, but good." He leaned back, stretching out on the couch like he was suddenly more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. "You know, for once, I don't want to be that untouchable guy. Just Jamie," I smiled, squeezing his hand. "Jamie sounds like a pretty great guy." And as the night stretched on, we talked and laughed and shared secrets like two people who'd finally found a way to drop the act. For the first time, I realized that maybe being untouchable wasn't a blessing at all. It was a cage. That night, Jamie wasn't untouchable. Not to me. And I wasn't just the new guy anymore. I had no clue what tomorrow would bring, but for once, I wasn't scared to find out. Morning came like an uninvited guest. I woke up on Jamie's couch, the remnants of last night swirling in my head. The warmth of his hand, the softness of his lips, the way his eyes had looked at me like I was the only person who mattered. The apartment was quiet, sunlight filtering through the cracked blinds and casting stripes across the cluttered living room. For a second, I just lay there, savoring the calm before reality crept in. Because reality was waiting. And it wasn't going to be easy. Jamie stirred beside me, stretching like a cat and groaning softly. He looked over, eyes half-lidded, but with that same crooked smile that made my insides flip-flop. "Morning, Matt," he said, voice rough from sleep. "Morning." I replied, awkward as hell but kind of thrilled that he was actually here. Like this was real, not just some dream I'd wake up from. We didn't rush to do anything. No grand declarations. No promises. Just two guys soaking in the moment like it was a rare gift. I wanted to memorize this feeling. The way being with him felt like finally breathing after holding my breath for too long. Eventually, Jamie nudged me awake enough to suggest grabbing coffee. "You're gonna need it if you want to survive the office today," he teased. I laughed. "You don't have to remind me." We stepped out into the city, which had somehow changed overnight. Less intimidating, more inviting. The streets buzzed with life, and I realized I hadn't felt this light in months. Jamie walked with an easy confidence, not the tooly, untouchable facade, but something more genuine. I found myself wanting to know everything about him, the good, the bad, and the messy in between. Over coffee at a hole-in-the-wall cafe, We talked about everything from favorite movies to dumb childhood memories. Jamie's laugh was contagious, and I caught myself staring more than once, trying to memorize the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. There was something about the way he let his guard down around me that made me feel like I could do the same. But as much as I wanted to stay in this bubble, I knew the world wouldn't wait. Work was looming, and with it, the complications that came with dating the boss's son, Matt. Jamie said quietly, tracing the rim of his coffee cup. If we're gonna do this, whatever this is, we need to be careful. I nodded, understanding the unspoken weight behind his words. Yeah, I get it. No one here exactly roots for us to be friends, let alone more. He sighed, a flicker of frustration crossing his face. My dad's not exactly the easiest guy to please. If he finds out, well, it won't be pretty. I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. We'll figure it out. Together. The rest of the day was a blur of stolen glances and half smiles across the office. Every time Jamie passed by, my heart did that annoying flip, reminding me that what we had was fragile and maybe even reckless. I tried to keep it cool, burying myself in work, but the truth was, I was constantly on edge. Then came the moment I'd been dreading, but also kind of expecting. I was deep in a meeting when the door swung open, and there he was, Mr. Reynolds, my boss, looking every bit as imposing as I imagined. Behind him, Jamie followed, his usual smirk nowhere to be found. Instead, he looked tense, like he was bracing for impact. Matt, my boss began, eyes sharp. Can I see you in my office? Now. My stomach dropped. I glanced at Jamie, who gave me a small, almost apologetic nod. I swallowed hard and followed my boss into his office, the door clicking shut behind me. Sit down, he said, voice cold but controlled. I did, heart pounding. Is something wrong, sir? He stared at me for a moment, then leaned back. I've been hearing things about you and Jamie. My mind raced. Had someone seen us? Were we already screwed? Look, he continued. Jamie's my son. This company is my life. I can't have distractions, especially ones that could jeopardize everything. I felt anger flare up, but I kept my voice steady. I'm not here to cause problems. I like Jamie. And I think he likes me. He snorted. Like you? That's rich. You're an employee. You're expendable. The words stung, but I refused to back down. I'm more than that. And Jamie's not just his father's son. He's his own person. My boss's face twisted with frustration. I don't care. If this relationship affects work, I'll have no choice but to let you go. I nodded, swallowing my pride. Understood. When I left his office, Jamie was waiting outside, looking like he'd just weathered a storm. I pulled him into a quiet corner. We'll figure this out, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. He looked up at me, eyes fierce. No. We'll make them see that this isn't just some mistake, that I'm not just my dad's son. And right then, with the city buzzing around us and the future uncertain, I realized that whatever came next, we were in it together. Untouchable no more. The next few days felt like walking a tightrope stretched over a pit of fire. Every time Jamie and I crossed paths at work, there was this electric tension, half thrill, half dread, because now everything was out there in the open, at least in my head. Word traveled faster than I'd expected. I caught a few sideways glances from coworkers, some whispering behind their hands. I wasn't naive enough to think they approved, but honestly, I didn't care. The hardest part was watching Jamie carry himself like nothing had changed, like his usual smirk was glued to his face even though I could see the cracks underneath. One afternoon, as I was wrapping up a presentation, Jamie cornered me near the elevator. His usual confident swagger was replaced by something raw, more real. Matt, he said, voice low, my dad's ramping up the pressure. He called me into his office today. I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. What'd he say? Jamie ran a hand through his hair, the gesture losing its usual careless charm. He's threatening to pull me from all the company projects if I don't end things. And if that happens, It won't just be work that suffers. That hit me like a punch. You mean personally? Yeah. He looked at me, eyes searching. I'm not sure how much more I can take. I reached out, gripping his arm. You don't have to do this alone. Whatever happens, I'm here. He smiled, but it was fragile. Thanks, Matt. That means everything. We didn't have time to say more before the elevator dinged, and we went our separate ways. But the weight of that conversation lingered, settling into my chest like a stone. That night, I found myself at Jamie's apartment again. The door barely closed behind me before he pulled me into a hug that spoke volumes. Fear, frustration, hope, all tangled together. We can't keep hiding, he whispered, but maybe we don't have to. I looked up, curiosity piqued. What do you mean? Jamie stepped back, eyes shining with determination. I want to show my dad and everyone else that this isn't some phase or scandal. That I'm not just a project or a problem to be managed. I nodded slowly, feeling the gravity of what he was proposing. So what's the plan? He grinned, that spark returning. We make it impossible to ignore. We live openly. We support each other no matter what. It sounded simple, but I knew it was anything but. Still, the thought of standing beside him, facing the world together, gave me a courage I hadn't felt in years. The following week was a whirlwind. Jamie and I started spending more time together publicly. Lunches at the company cafe, casual walks during breaks, small moments that sent ripples through the office. Some people stared, others whispered, but every time I caught Jamie's eye, I saw pride shining through. One day, my boss called me in again. My heart sank, bracing for the worst. But this time, his tone was different, calmer, almost resigned. I've been watching, he said. You two are persistent. I swallowed. We're just trying to be honest. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Jamie's pushing back harder than I expected. Maybe it's time I did the same. The threat hung in the air, but beneath it, something else flickered. A grudging respect, maybe. As I left his office, Jamie was waiting outside, a victorious smile on his face. We're not out of the woods, but that wasn't a total loss. I grinned back. No, it wasn't. That night, as we sat on his couch with the city lights twinkling outside, Jamie reached for my hand. Thanks for sticking with me, Matt. I squeezed his hand gently. Always. You're worth it. And in that quiet moment, I realized that no matter what came next, no matter how tough the road ahead, we'd face it together. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can be is simply real. Weeks passed, and with each one, the line between work and us blurred more and more. Some days, I felt like we were superheroes, defying expectations and the suffocating world of corporate politics. Other days, it was like we were two kids trying to keep afloat in a storm that refused to calm. One Thursday afternoon, Jamie texted me out of the blue. Meet me on the rooftop after work. Need to show you something. Curiosity piqued. I wrapped up my last emails faster than usual and made my way to the building's roof. The kind of spot most people ignored, but perfect for catching your breath and shutting out the chaos below. Jamie was already there, leaning against the railing, eyes scanning the city skyline. He looked alive. The kind of alive that only comes from breaking free, even if just for a moment. Hey, I said, sliding beside him. He smiled, that familiar, crooked grin. Hey, Matt, thanks for coming, I shrugged. You sounded mysterious. What's up? He pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. Been working on something. Thought maybe you'd like to see. Flipping through the pages, I saw scribbled stories, half-finished poems, thoughts about feeling trapped and trying to find freedom. It was raw and messy and utterly beautiful. These are yours? I asked, surprised. Jamie nodded. Never shared them with anyone before. Feels safer in my head. I looked up, meeting his gaze. You're braver than you think. He chuckled softly. Maybe because you're here. The city stretched around us. Endless lights. The hum of life moving forward. In that moment, everything felt possible. But then, the moment got real. Jamie looked at me seriously. Matt, about us. About everything. I want to know. Are you ready for this? For the fallout? Because it's not just about us. It's about the people we work with, the people who judge, the people who won't understand. I took a deep breath. I'm scared, but I'm not backing down. He reached out, fingers intertwining with mine. Good, because I'm not either. We stayed up there for hours, talking dreams, fears, and everything in between. It was the kind of night that changes you. The kind that you carry with you when everything else feels heavy. A few days later, something unexpected happened. The company held a big event, a gala to celebrate some milestone. Jamie surprised me by asking me to be his date. I was stunned. "Are you serious?" He nodded, eyes bright. "I want to show everyone who I am and who I want to be with." The night of the gala, I stood beside him, dressed in a suit that still felt foreign to me. But Jamie, he was radiant, confident, genuine, and unapologetically himself. As we walked in together, I could feel the eyes on us. Some curious, some skeptical, and a few, surprisingly, warm. Throughout the night, we moved as a team, deflecting whispers and raising eyebrows, but also sharing smiles and quiet moments that reminded me why this was worth it. At one point, my boss approached us. My heart tightened, bracing for confrontation. But instead, he surprised me. He looked at Jamie, then at me and said, "You both make a good team. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I blinked, stunned into silence. Jamie grinned. "Thanks, Dad." That night, as we left the gala, the city felt different, lighter, like we'd taken one small step toward changing the story. Back at Jamie's apartment, we collapsed onto the couch, exhausted and exhilarated. "I didn't think tonight would go like that," I admitted. He laughed, pulling me close. "Neither did I, but maybe people can surprise you." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Yeah, maybe they can." And as we sat there, tangled up in each other and the quiet hum of the city, I realized that being untouchable was overrated. What mattered was being seen, really seen, and choosing to fight for that, no matter what. Because, in the end, love isn't about status or fear. It's about being brave enough to be real. And with Jamie, I was ready to be exactly that. In the weeks after the gala, things shifted in ways I hadn't quite expected. The whispers at work didn't disappear entirely, probably never would, but the sharp edges dulled. People started to treat Jamie and me like just people, not some scandal or headline. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged, not only here, but beside him. One evening, Jamie and I found ourselves back on that same rooftop, the city lights stretching endlessly beneath us. The air was cool, the kind that makes you breathe deeper, feel more alive. He looked out over the skyline with that familiar, thoughtful expression, and I realized how much had changed since that first night in the break room. "You know," I said softly, "I never thought I'd be here with you like this. Not just sneaking around or hiding, but really here." He smiled, turning to face me, eyes warm and steady. "Me neither, but I'm glad we took the risk. It was worth it." I reached out, fingers brushing against his, the simple touch grounding me. "It's still scary though, all of it." Jamie nodded. "Yeah, it is, but maybe that's what makes it real. Not easy or perfect, but ours." We stood there for a moment, wrapped in quiet understanding. No grand promises, just two people acknowledging the messy, beautiful reality of what we'd built together. It wasn't about fairy tales or perfect endings, but about choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. Later, as we walked back inside, Jamie slipped his hand into mine, fingers curling naturally around mine. It felt like home, and that's when I realized something important. Being untouchable wasn't about being above it all or unreachable. It was about letting someone in, allowing yourself to be seen, and trusting that someone would stay. With Jamie, I wasn't just the new guy anymore. I was someone who mattered, someone who loved and was loved back. And that made all the difference. The rest of the world could keep watching, judging, whispering, because in the end, what mattered was this, right here, right now, with him. And honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything.